Have you ever woken up from a dream, your heart pounding, and it felt so real, so absolutely vivid that for a second you weren't sure where you were? We all have. We spend about a third of our entire lives in that world. This bizarre theater in our minds where the impossible is just Tuesday. But what if it's not just a bunch of random, chaotic nonsense? What if it's actually a secret language, a series of cryptic clues being sent up from the deepest, most hidden parts of who we are? Well, today, we're going to be detectives. We are opening the case files on our own minds to try and decode the messages we send ourselves every single night.
So, our investigation, it doesn't start with some abstract theory. No, it starts with a real-life enigma, a story that is so incredible it makes you question everything you think you know about sleep. Let's dig into what's known as the guillotine dream.
Just try to wrap your head around that for a second. This man dreams an entire detailed story. He's on trial, he's sentenced to death, he's led to the scaffold, he feels the cold metal, he feels the blade fall, that final sharp shock, and then he wakes up. The dream, which felt like it must have taken hours, happened in the literal split second that a piece of his bed frame fell and hit him on the neck. It was a perfect, impossible simulation. How does the brain do that?
So, what was that, really? Was it just a fluke? The brain panicking, just throwing together some nonsensical images in response to a physical feeling? Or was it something more? Was the brain already telling itself a story, and it just used that falling bedpost as the perfect, dramatic ending? This is the central mystery we have to solve. Is it noise, or is it a message?
To even begin to get to the bottom of a question that big, we need to bring in an expert. We have to consult the case files of the very first true detective of the dream world. A man who looked at all these midnight riddles and didn't see madness, he saw a motive.
You see, before Sigmund Freud came along, dreams were mostly just written off as, well, junk. They were absurdities, the meaningless static that a brain makes when it's sleeping. But Freud proposed something absolutely revolutionary. He said that every single dream, no matter how bizarre or nonsensical it seems, is a carefully constructed message. It is a coded dispatch straight from the unconscious mind.
And this, right here, this was his guiding principle. He tells us to look for that tangled knot right in the middle of a dream. The one part that makes absolutely no sense at all. For Freud, that's not a mistake in the dream. That is the clue. That's the loose thread you pull. It's the secret passageway that leads you directly into the most hidden parts of who you really are.
Okay, so if dreams are a code, how in the world do we crack it? I mean, it's pretty obvious you can't just take them at face value. So Freud developed a very specific set of investigative tools, almost like a psychological decoder ring, to start unraveling their secrets.
It's really a three-step process. First, and this is the big one, you have to realize that the story you think you're seeing in the dream, that's not the real story. It's a disguise. Second, you have to hunt for the underlying desire, the wish that's powering the whole production. And third, you have to understand the incredibly clever tricks the mind uses to hide that true wish from itself.
And this brings us to two of the most important ideas in all of dream analysis. You've got the manifest content. That's the dream you remember when you wake up, the story of the guillotine or flying purple monkeys or whatever it is. But then underneath that, you have the latent content. And that is the hidden thought, the raw, unconscious idea the dream is really trying to express. The whole job of a dream detective is to see past the manifest disguise to get to that latent motive.
And so what is that motive? What's driving all this? Well, according to Freud, every single dream at its core is an attempt at wish fulfillment. It's the mind literally giving us what we want, or at least what it thinks we want. Now, sometimes it's super simple. Freud tells a story about a little girl who was told she couldn't have any more chocolate bars at a store. And that night, she dreams she's eating handfuls of them. It's a direct, undisguised fulfillment of her wish. But for us adults, well, our wishes are usually a lot more complicated and a lot more forbidden.
So how does the mind get away with showing us these forbidden wishes? How does it sneak them past our conscious, rational selves? Freud called this process the dream work. Think of it like a clever internal censor or an editor inside your head. It takes the raw, maybe even shocking latent thought, and it scrambles it. It uses symbols. It merges multiple people or ideas into one confusing image. That's a process he called condensation. It does all this to create a manifest dream that can slip right past our conscious mind without setting off any alarm bells.
Okay, that's enough theory. Let's see these detective tools in action. Let's open our first case file. This one involves a dream that, on the surface, seems completely nonsensical. It's like a surrealist painting of a friend and a relative all mixed up.
So this is the manifest content. Freud dreams that his friend R is his uncle. Not one and then the other, but both people at the exact same time, their faces just fuse together. It's a bizarre, totally illogical image. What on earth could be the hidden wish or the hidden thought behind something like that?
Okay, this is classic dream detective work. Watch how he solves it. Freud starts by just thinking about the associations. First, his uncle Joseph. He was a good guy, but the family always kind of thought of him and called him a simpleton. That's clue number one. Clue number two is a tiny visual link. His friend R's beard is starting to get some gray streaks in it, just like his uncle's beard. The dream work seized on that one tiny visual similarity and used it to perform an act of condensation. It fused two people into one impossible image to express one simple and, yeah, frankly insulting, latent thought. My friend R is acting like a simpleton. It's a mental shortcut, really. We do this all the time. We associate people to make judgments. But in a dream, the unconscious does it with this surreal visual logic.
All right, let's move on to a case file that might feel eerily familiar to a lot of you. This one belongs to a category Freud called typical dreams. You know, dreams with common themes that pop up for people all over the world. This is the classic anxiety dream of being naked in public.
Oh, you know this one. The manifest dream is just filled with pure panic and shame. You're in the middle of a big presentation or just walking down a busy street and you suddenly realize you have no clothes on and everyone is staring. It's mortifying. But Freud's analysis completely flips this on its head. He argues that the dream isn't about the shame you're feeling now, it's actually a wish to go back to a time when you felt no shame at all. It's an echo from early childhood, that paradise where being naked was totally natural and free, kind of like the emperor in his new clothes. That feeling of anxiety you have in the dream, that's just the censor, your adult mind reacting to this forbidden childhood wish to be free from all those rules.
And now for our final case file. We are going to tackle maybe the most disturbing typical dream of all. The dream where a loved one, a parent, a brother or sister, maybe even a child, dies. And what's even more unsettling is that sometimes, in the dream, we feel absolutely no sadness. Now, to understand these dreams, Freud says we have to do something that's really hard. We have to stop thinking like adults. For us, death is this terrifying, absolute final thing. But for a really young child, the concept is completely different. A child doesn't grasp the horror of it, or the idea of forever. To them, death is just a form of absence.
And that insight right there is the key to the whole case. When we dream about a parent's death or a sibling's death, it often isn't a wish for them to actually be harmed. It's a wish that comes from our earliest, most infantile rivalries. It's the simple, selfish wish of a child for a rival, for affection or attention, or maybe for an authority figure to just be gone. The dream is tapping into that primitive, childish logic where dead just means out of my way. And the lack of sadness we feel in the dream, it isn't monstrous. It's just another clue that we are dealing with the raw, unfiltered logic of a child's unconscious mind.
So, after reviewing all this evidence, from the impossible guillotine dream, to the simpleton uncle, to the death of a loved one, what's the final verdict? What have we actually learned from this little investigation into the unconscious?
The conclusion really is crystal clear. That bizarre, sometimes terrifying, sometimes wonderful movie that plays in your head every single night is not just static. It is a profoundly personal, deeply symbolic language. It is your own unconscious mind talking directly to you, using a secret code of wishes, memories, and clever deceptions to tell you the stories you're not allowed to tell yourself when you're awake.
Look, Freud never claimed he had all the answers. He didn't create a perfect science. He just gave us a key, and he pointed us toward a locked door inside ourselves. The dreams you have tonight aren't going to be about his uncle or his patients. They're going to be about you. They'll be your own personal riddles, written in your own secret language. So the only question left is, now that you know how to look for the clues, are you brave enough to try and solve them?